想象一下，礼拜一匆匆忙忙的到了办公的大楼1楼，坐上了电梯，电梯非常的挤，但是你看到一个不是非常熟悉的一个同事，他的衣服穿反了。这个时候你在思考到底要不要跟他说，还在思考的时候呢，他走出了电梯，那你可能想说应该他的隔壁同事会跟他说吧。但是中午吃饭的时候你又看到他了，他的衣服还是穿反的，那这个时候你会怎么办呢？今天想要跟大家分享一个在矽谷非常夯的主管学，也就是 Radical Candor， 那中文的翻译就是彻底坦率。那希望能够透过 Radical Candor 能够帮助大家了解要怎么去面对以及回应难以出口的事情。Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 Podcast。I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast. 我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. Today, we're going to do something a bit backwards. We're actually going to talk about a book that was recommended by someone we interviewed before we play the interview for you. And the reason that we want to introduce this book is because it's so central to one of the main messages of the interviewee that we want to make sure that people have a very strong context and why this becomes such an important book for him understanding business culture, especially because the person we interviewed is a Taiwanese who spent most of his time working abroad and then coming back and building a company in Taiwan. And that company culture that he wanted to build and the culture shock that he underwent trying to build a company back in what he considered, his homeland was really a struggle for him. And he found a book that was able to encompass the type of business or the type of corporate culture he wanted to have within his own company. So today we want to talk about that book. That book is called Radical Candor by author Kim Scott. And this book came out in 2017, but it was so influential, especially in the tech world in Silicon Valley, that even very prominent venture capitalists started writing reviews and talking about why this could be really important for people trying to build their company.
那在之前的单元当中，大家应该还记得，我们就常常利用的 culture map 来形容这个部分，也就是有很多人呢，他可能是在高情景文化或低情景文化，但是呢，又加上他有很多的文化，他可能是很喜欢直接的去批评，或者是他喜欢间接的去批评。那我们有提到，他其实就等于说有非常多不同种的人，他们有习惯的方式。但是呢，为什么我们想要来介绍 Radical Candor? It's because in an organization, in any size of an organization, 你一定会有很多不同个性还有文化的人。So that makes it really difficult for managers to actually manage the team because you don't really know if this person wants it a direct way or maybe this person you have to read between the lines or to feel what the answer may be. 所以Radical Candor 它变成是一个非常夯的一个主管学，因为它就可以去逼我们大家能够很坦率、很诚实的去面对，尤其是在讲一些很难说出口的事情。
So Radical Candor is coming from the standpoint of how do you be honest or how do you challenge people without making them take it very personally or make it come across very negative. But there are a lot of cases where you need to be honest or you need to be straightforward as a way to help someone.
Yeah.
Now, we talk about constructive criticism, but oftentimes when the criticism is based on the person as opposed to the topic, that can be really hard. So if you listen to our episode talking about the different directness of cultures, this was in the idea of there were certain European cultures like German where they're very direct. but they're very careful not to criticize the person. But sometimes when you need to have someone make an adjustment or you want to say something that will help them go forward, how do you do it in a way that continues to show you care, but is going to be critical, as opposed to like people out there who are just critical and real jerks about it?
And I think that's the point, is that sometimes, even though we did talk about a lot of cultures requires time and patience to kind of wait till the right moment to say it, bring them out to a different context. 但是有的时候啊，你就是没有那么多时间. You gotta tell them right away. 但是 like Nick said, how do you actually do it so that you're telling the truth? Maybe it's a very hard truth, but you're still helping them and helping everyone at the same time. And that's where radical candor comes in. 所谓的 radical candor, 它就是说你很在乎人家，但是你也可以很彻底的坦率，因为你很在乎人家。
A great story by the writer of this book, Kim Scott, kind of outlines where radical candor comes in which she was working at Google. She had to give a presentation in front of tops of Google, talking about what she was doing, including Larry Page, Sergey Brin, and Sheryl Sandberg, who happened to be her boss. Sheryl Sandberg, being the former COO of Facebook, has written several best-selling books. So the author gives a talk, and at the end of the talk, she feels like it's okay. And then Sheryl Sandberg walks up and starts asking questions about, how did you feel that went? Have you ever considered getting a speech coach? Have you considered getting help with your presentations? And the author was like kind of trying to understand what Sheryl Sandberg got. He's like, oh, I don't think I think the presentation went okay. And then Sheryl Sandberg had to stop her and, okay, I don't think what I'm saying is getting across to you. When you use every 3 words, you sound stupid. And the author immediately starts getting very offended and very upset. And why is this my boss talking to me like this? But then later, she kind of came to the realization that Sheryl Sandberg was trying to help her and make a point that you need to sound professional in this environment. You're talking to some of the most powerful people in the Valley, potentially in the tech world, and you're not coming across professional. She's not saying it to hurt her. She's trying to make a point that's to improve her position.
那其实 Kim Scott 他在另外一个情况之下呢，他也了解到了到底什么叫做 radical candor。那这个情况之下呢，他有一次啊，在 Manhattan， 他就带着他的一个很小的小狗在街上。那他因为就是很爱狗，但是他又不知道该怎么训练小狗，所以小狗就有一点点喜欢乱跑。And the puppy almost got into a traffic, so she had to like hold the puppy back. But then her heart was racing at the time. 她非常的紧张，因为 her puppy almost went into traffic. So obviously she was really nervous. 那有一个男的就在她旁边，就跟她说 I can see that you really care about your puppy, but you're going to kill your puppy if you don't teach him how to sit. 那他只是一个路人，这个路人甲他要离开之前，他就是转过来，然后就跟 Kim Scott 说 It does not mean it's clear. 所以我觉得 it is not mean it's clear 这个 phrase 我觉得其实就很清楚地解释 what is radical candor. What does it actually mean? It's actually good for someone, but it may not sound really nice and fluffy right away.
Now, like all good frameworks, radical candor has a pretty simple axis to help you understand where radical candor fits in. And there's 2 axes that you can understand. The first axis is nicely described as you give a damn axis, meaning how much do you actually care? In this case, with radical candor, it's about showing that you care personally. You care about the outcome, and that's the top. And then the bottom of this is you just don't give a crap. Maybe you're just being a jerk, or maybe you're just giving information to give information. The other axis, your horizontal axis, on the left is silence. Someone who is unwilling to say something even when they see an issue or they see a problem. And then the far right side is the challenge directly, the willingness to outright say what needs to be said, even if it feels a little awkward or a little uncomfortable.
So therefore, 我们一定会有4个 quadrant, right? We have 4 quadrants. 所以 Radical Candor is at the quadrant where it's you care a lot about people and you are okay to challenge people directly. 这个就是 Radical Candor. 那我们先来说一下好了，它的旁边呢，也就是还是很在乎人家的部分，但是就比较unwilling to piss people off. 这个 quadrant 呢，就是很多台湾人比较多亚洲文化的人可能会在这个 quadrant， 因为我们通常是比较不喜欢去让人家麻烦啊，或者是算了，我们比较像类似像这样的文化。So we're on this quadrant which is called the ruinous empathy， 比较摧毁性的同理心。
Ruinous empathy is the idea that you care a lot, but you don't want to say something as a way to help someone save face. But this also means that you're losing an opportunity to improve someone's life or someone's position, where you may see them just continuously make the same mistake or put themselves in a really bad situation simply because no one pointed out what needed to be changed.
So let's take a look at if this is someone that just doesn't really care a lot about other people, right? 你是在 the other end. 那如果你是不是很在乎别人，但是也不是很喜欢对人家很直接的话， then you're the manipulative insincerity. 这个就是可能这个人他喜欢去骗人家 kiss ass 啊，比较是在这个部分。
Yeah, or it's just like waiting for someone to fail, like in the background, like any second ago. Yeah. The last quadrant is someone who's willing to challenge directly, but they don't really care about the person. And this is basically the asshole quadrant or the jerk quadrant, where they're just out there. Internet trolls would fall into this quadrant. We call it obnoxious aggression. So again, with the internet troll doesn't matter what gets put online, they just have to write something extremely negative because they just want to say something.
Exactly. 那种网络的酸民好像很多都是这种 obnoxious aggression， 就是不在乎人家感受，但是他又觉得我就是想讲我要讲的话。But of course, I have to say this. Kim Scott mentioned this before. She said, try not to label people into the 4 quadrant. She said, try to think of the conversation in the 4 quadrant, 不是人在不同的 quadrant, 因为每一个人都可能会到4种不同的 quadrant.
A quick example to show the contrast between, say, radical candor, which may be uncomfortable, but it's positive, versus obnoxious aggression. Recently, we had a few typos. We are human. In our social media that we didn't catch. And we actually found that there are 2 different ways that people handle it. Yeah. We actually have gotten people who have quietly emailed or private messaged and pointed out, hey, did you mean this word versus this word? There's a small grammar mistake here. And they've either private messaged us or they've written very politely in the comments. And it's something that we're very happy to go and fix. Again, we do our best not to have that issue, but we're human, we're busy, it comes across. Versus obnoxious aggression, where we've actually been told on our social media, you have a typo. How dare you teach people if you don't know how to check your own grammar? So that was to the level of, yeah, you pointed out we have a typo, but to say that our content is irrelevant because there was a typo, or that any help that we have given people is not real because there's a typo, that's obnoxious aggression. So that radical candor, people who are willing to private message, people who leave a friendly comment, we appreciate that. It can be embarrassing. You know, we kind of look at like, oh, God. But at the same time, they do it in a way that it's about improving or to show that they care.
Absolutely. 我觉得 obnoxious aggression 它有一个很特点，就是它会让你感到你很不值得。It will like crush your worthiness, right? Like, how dare you? Your entire page is completely inconsequential now.
Yes, your 200 posts are pointless because of this typo.
Yeah. So actually, I have an idea. 在我们的 opening 的时候，我给大家来想象一个 scenario about someone who put on a jacket backward. Okay, that happens to everyone, right? So I don't know. I'm asking Nick, what do you think? If I were to do this using Radical Candor, how would you do this?
That would be one of those things where it's like, again, you're in the elevator, maybe just get off on that floor, tap the person, pull them aside and be like, hey, you may want to flip that around, your shirt's inside out. Or I mean, even more embarrassing, like your underwear tag is sticking out.
Oh my God, that happened to me before.
Pulling that person aside and saying something versus back to that ruinous empathy where maybe you feel really bad for them, but you're like, I'm going to let you go about your entire day with your underwear out. Versus, manipulative insincerity, which is like, ha, 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 ha.
Well, you look
Take
so
a photo,
nice
let me put it on Instagram.
那我觉得 obnoxious aggression 可能就是在那个 elevator 里面当着很多陌生人面前 Hey, your jacket's backward. Fix it.
Yeah, or oh my God, it's so unprofessional to have your underwear tag sticking out.
Yeah.
Can't believe you showed up to the office like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like that's probably a really good way to tell what is radical candor.
So another time where in Taiwan people will feel very embarrassed, actually, Cher, you have a story of having to use radical candor, but the phrasing that you use specifically was really to show this care personally. But it was a situation that was difficult.
Yeah, it was a very difficult situation. So to make long story short, 也就是我们在办公室隔壁有一个停车场，机械式停车场。那这机械式停车场它可能那时候刚刚开始是新的，所以新的 management everyone's new。那个时候我们就希望能够员工，其中有个女生啊，我们 we work late sometimes. I want her to be safe， 所以我们就让她能够在那边租车位，为了是希望她能够安全。但是因为他们的 management 真的很不好，所以那个时候呢，我们只要在那边停车，大概有2-3次吧，都会 they just kind of forgot where the car is. They mislabeled the license plate with the lot number. So 有很多次大家可能要等个3-4个小时才可以找得到车子 right?
Yeah, because this was one of those elevator parking lots where your car goes in a slot and then it gets put in an elevator, and they completely lost her car.
So that's a really big issue, 因为这不止一次，而且是3-4次，而且其中有一次呢，我的这个同事他本来想要开着他的车，然后去 to have a dinner with her friends， 然后就回家，但是他没有办法 because they couldn't get their car， 所以他得搭计程车去，再搭计程车回来，然后再来拿他的车。So it became just incredibly inconvenient and it takes so much time. 然后我就觉得这样子真的不行，因为这个停车场它还是在某一家的饭店下面。So I know that when the hotel opens, this is going to be such a huge issue for them. 所以其实呢，我自己内心还是 struggle 了一下，因为 as a Taiwanese 我可能是比较想说，我到底要不要讲？我这样讲了会不会给人家什么一些 trouble？ 会不会有些人会被 fire？ I don't really want to do this， 所以我 struggle 了一下，但是我又想说，但是如果我不讲的话 it's gonna happen and again to so many different people. That's not good. 所以我就决定打电话给他。But the way I framed it, and eventually found a way that I framed it is that I told her the whole reason why I wanted to rent that parking space for our staff is because I want her to be safe. But ended up to be the complete opposite. 所以其实啊，我就非常的直接的跟他讲这些状况 and I didn't use any like threatening tones. I use a very, my normal tone of voice, but I showed the concern for my employee. 那其实这个时候他 management 就很快速的做了一些改变 So they actually changed a completely different style like a month after.
Yeah, their system totally changed.
Yeah, so honestly, I'm really glad I did it. I struggled internally a little bit, 但是我觉得有的时候你就是必须要讲出这些比较难以出口的话 but then you ended up helping them to avoid a lot of these inconvenience for a lot of people.
So this is definitely a case where I think some other people would just take the obnoxious aggression, call and
like
yell and how dare you and how unprofessional it is and you just cannot do it this way. But by phrasing in terms of like this is not trying to cause you trouble. It's just that there's a very specific concern and about the care for the employee. And it led to a change. Doesn't guarantee to lead to a change, but I'm sure that was a much more appreciated way of handling it than just yelling at them, talking about how their employees are not well trained, because maybe you're not even getting to what the actual issue is or what is the motivation behind why it needs to change.
Yeah. I think the situation would have gone differently if I had said, you wasted my time, my money, how dare you? But instead, I would say if I wanted to help you guys to make this better, because when the hotels opens up, you guys going to be in a lot of trouble if you cannot manage this more efficiently.
And this is a very big difference in the way things are handled. Actually, an example of when I went obnoxious aggression style is I have sort of a scorched earth policy where in cases where I know someone is not being honest or they're lying, I will actually find all the evidence and then bring it out. So one time I was working for another company and we were supplying a US company. And the US company was continuously late with payments. They weren't doing things really well. And at one point, they tried to turn around and say that, oh, the reason why they cannot pay was because they had made a certain request and it didn't get fulfilled.
Right.
And so my first reaction is I dug out all their emails, highlighting what they requested, how it was replied to, what their reply was, and their agreement. And I highlighted, like I redug it out. I highlighted everything and I just sent it out, CC'd the owner of the company, the other supplier and everything, like full, how dare you? Okay, you want to turn this around, then we're going to do this. That was definitely not the best way to handle that because it came from finally like the owner of the company had to call and they had to sort it out because I was going to burn it to the ground if necessary because I didn't think they were a very good client. But that wasn't coming from the care of how to make the client better or how to make the relationship better. That was, I think you're a crappy client and I'm going to take you out for it.
Really? So how would you do it differently now?
In that case, I think I would have more politely pointed things out, but then got into a bit more on the question side of what's really going on. What is the issue? How can this be solved better in the future rather than, all right, we're just going to burn this down. Well, aside from our two personal examples, but going forward, again, we wanted to give you a really good overview of where Radical Candor comes in, because as we go into interviewing Stanley, the founder of Kono Summit, he talks about building this bridge between his US company where he is and then establishing a strong Taiwan team and how he had to build a company culture that allowed both sides to be honest and build up the company successfully.
Yeah, like 为什么他想要使用这个 Radical Candor? 那他怎么样来使用它? How do you actually apply it? Or if there's any issues or any challenges along the way. So we'll definitely interview him for that. Stay tuned for that interview.
And for links to the book, to the author's talk, so you can get a sense about where she's coming from, definitely check out the show notes. And if you have any questions, leave us a comment. Let us know what you're thinking. And we'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production, produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communication R&D, and email us at sherry@epstyleplus.com.